Tonight, I hope to serve as a bridge between our two countries, our two beloved countries. And also want to thank mi preciosa, Angela, la güerita, for making a drive from El Paso and for being here on this wonderful evening and sharing yet another memorable moment. Angela, you continue to be my light amid the darkness, and there is a lot of darkness right now. In thanking all of you, I'd like to borrow a line from then Senator Barack Obama, who once asked, in what other country, and in my case, an immigrant, the firstborn of Mexican farm workers, can stand before you on this evening and tell you my story? I'm grateful that you have asked me to talk about my book, Midnight in Mexico, and I'm especially moved to talk about such a critical issue, freedom of expression. So many journalists in my homeland of Mexico have paid the ultimate price. I hope to honor their memory. I also want to pay tribute to a friend of the foundation and a friend to many of you here, the late author Charles Bowden, whose beautiful, evocative, powerful writing and loyalty and dedication to the border will serve as an example and an inspiration for a future generation of writers and journalists. And I know he's not here, but I also want to thank Benjamina Leader Science, who was, I think, the last speaker, for helping me in writing this book, for telling me, you got to get real here. He kept saying, you got to cut the shit and get real. Many people have asked me, what's the storyline behind Midnight in Mexico? Is it about narcos? My response is that the drug war in Mexico is just a backdrop, but the heart and soul of the story is about the universal search for home, a quest for truth. It is about believing in hope, that flickering light, that during the darkest time of the night, it's a family story, a love letter to my mother about our homeland, the tragic beauty of Mexico, a testimony to a tumultuous, transformative time. But I have to confess that moving away from that silence, that comfortable zone we reporters love so much, was the most difficult thing I have done in my career, and that's where the tequila comes in. Starting with the book proposal, and I'm sure Melissa will at some point empathize with this, but I had something like 6 to 7 failed attempts, all rejections, and they were not emails, they were actually FedEx that would come and you would open it and you go, oh my God. Enough that my agent finally calls me one day and says, Alfredo, we have a problem. He said, I have never turned my back on a client, and I have no intention of doing that to you. But this is not working out. The problem is that you're trying to be too much of a reporter and not enough of a human being. You are something of a Mexican Forrest Gump, lucky to be at the right place, the right time, but you don't have a narrative. You don't have a story. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy just wants to fire me. And he said, you may want to consider coming up to New York. So I take a plane from Mexico City, arrive in New York City, and I call up, and I think, okay, he probably has an appointment, and the secretary's going to say, it's not going to work out or something. But I talked to him, and he said, he had one final request. He says, listen, do me a favor, can you find a liquor store and pick up a bottle of your favorite tequila? And I'll see you at the office. This is Friday afternoon, around 5-ish. I'm thinking, wow. I think this is not the way I expected this to follow.
Well, I like that you call journalism an incurable disease. My parents will appreciate that.
You would agree, right?
Yeah, actually. I was wondering if you could take us back to the oh shit moment. 2003. Was it 2003?
2004.
2004 in Nuevo Laredo.
Nuevo Laredo.
And I wonder why we never really get past these body count stories, why we haven't gotten into more in-depth stories, and if you could kind of explain how it all started back then when you first realized that something momentous was really happening in Mexico and you had that moment.
Well, I'll take you back just a little more. It was 2000. Vicente Fox had just won the election in Mexico, and I had a really hard decision at the time. I was a correspondent in Mexico, and the Dallas Morning News had asked me to consider a job in Washington, D.C. And I remember the night of the celebration at the Angel of Independence. I had just gotten the first interview with Fox. In fact, I had asked Fox. Fox started using the word Mexican heroes. He would always say, héroes mexicanos, héroes de Mexico, etc. And I asked Fox at one campaign stop in Fresno, I said, if you really think we're heroes, I want you to promise me that if you win the election, you will give this Mexican hero the first interview. And I put him on the spot, and he said yes. And he actually did. I mean, he followed up, and he gave me the first interview. So that night, I'm really high. I'm really thinking, wow, this is great. This is Mexico's moment. And I ran into a high official from the State Department. And I said, listen, I'm really wondering whether I should stay in Mexico or take this job in D.C. And he says, you know what? I would take the job in D.C. Mexico will be an old story. Mexico has democracy. Nothing's really going to happen. It's going to take a while, but the story will really not go anywhere. Besides, what if George W. Bush wins the election? You will have Bush and Fox, and you would be right in the middle of D.C. So I take the job in D.C., and obviously September 11 happens. The whole thing changes. The dynamic changes between both countries. And I was really desperate to get back to Mexico. I missed Angela. We were doing the commuter thing. And I also missed the country. So when I asked the paper, I said, I'd like to go back to Mexico. They said, well, you can do this if you, not if, but it'd be great to have you back in Mexico, but we'd like you to also solve the murders of the women of Juarez. Who's killing so many women in Juarez? And I thought, wow, okay, piece of cake.
Right.